What's up, guys? Welcome to the Walk On Warrior podcast, where we prepare young student athletes for next level success. I am your host, Coach Z. And listen, I am super excited for our guest today. We've pretty much hit every single category within this Walk On Warrior success. We'll call it pillars of success. And one pillar that I really, through this whole movement, I wanted to dig into is the mindset of somebody that has had to come from real difficult conditions growing up. And, you know, many junior college and walk-on student athletes go through this. However, not very many voices are out there, and very powerful voices. And not only powerful voices, but somebody that has been able to not only get out of it, but be very successful and get to the highest level of achievement in athletics. And so with that said, without further ado, I'd like to welcome my guest, Mr. Ron Jenkins. Welcome to the podcast.
How you doing, Coach Z? Thank you for having me, man. It's a blessing to be here. Your podcast and the message that you want to get out to your listeners, I think is awesome, and that's why I chose to be here today. And I can't wait to get started, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's dig into let's get into the nitty gritty real quick here. So talk a little bit about your upbringing, because that's really your story. Obviously, we know that you ended up playing football. It was at Fresno, correct?
Right.
So talk a little bit about your upbringing and where you started to kind of where you ended up at Fresno.
Well, I think my situation is probably a little different than the norm. And as you mentioned, there are kids out there who share my same story. And I'll just begin with my mom passing away when I was 2 years old and me going into the foster care system and just being bounced around in that arena until eventually being adopted into a situation that was supposed to be of help and reassurance and nurturing and all those things that makes a complete person. However, I got the short end of the stick, man, and I was adopted into a situation where it was for monetary gain, and those monies that were given by the government were used to buy drugs, to sell drugs, to make more money. As a result of that, by the age 23, I have 4 brothers killed, a sister go to prison, a nephew die of crib death. It was an extremely violent environment where the consequences outweighed, the situation. When I was 13, I lost some drug money that was given to me by my foster mom, and she put a knife to my throat and told me she'd kill me. There was physical abuse. You can check off the boxes of abuses that I experienced in that situation. Very traumatic. However, as a kid, you don't know you're living in a traumatic situation because you think that this is what it is. You think that everybody's house operates like this, you know. Fortunately, I was exposed to church at a young age. There was a lady who would come to our house on Sunday mornings, and she would take us to church. So I was introduced to the power of God very early. And when I turned age 13, there was a situation that happened in my house, and I wanted to take my life. And the only person I knew to turn to was God. And in a puddle of tears, I dropped down to my knees and just start praying and asking God, to remove me out of this situation. And it took him 7 years. But within those 7 years, a lot of things happened in my life that I couldn't explain at that time. I see it now, which included him placing a mentor in my life, a man who me and my friends shot out his front window with a BB gun. And he came to my house and told my foster mom that we had to pay for it. And we didn't have the money to pay for it. At least I didn't. So instead of him calling the police and making a big stink about it, he told me, "You're going to work off that debt to pay for my window." He was a contractor. So he told me to meet him at his house that Saturday morning, and we would go to this job site. He was remodeling a bathroom, and he took me with him and told me this was how I was going to work off paying for his window. Long story short, we're there on site, and he has to go pick up supplies. So he tells me, I need you to knock this wall down, and I need you to knock this wall down. I knew nothing about construction. So I'm like, wait a minute, if I knock these walls down, this whole house is gonna come down with it. Anyway, so he leaves and leaves me with a sledgehammer, man. And I just started knocking the walls down in the bathroom. When he got back, I had the wood all stacked up to the side. And from that point on, that was a relationship that was very pivotal in my life at that time, because I had no male role models. I had none. The lady who adopted me, she was a single parent, and the only male role models that I saw were gang members, drug dealers, pimps, players, and all those kind of things that would come through our house because, as I stated earlier, she took the monies and bought drugs to sell drugs. So that was the kind of company that we had. Um, just to piggyback on that story, one time we were at the job site, and the ladies who owned the house, she came outside and she told Mr. Burnett, she said, "Hey, I've been knowing you a long time, and I see you with this young man. He looks like you, but I know he's not your son." And he looked at her and he told her, "This is my son."
Mm.
And that really touched my heart, and it was an immediate bond, that we had. And from that point on, I basically started hanging out at his house. His wife started helping me with my homework. I would get out of school and just go over there because it was a safer environment for me. And again, I mentioned God, man. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was being led in the right directions all the time, all the time. And from that relationship, I gained, an extended family per se, um, someone or a family who ran the way I thought families should be ran. I can remember when I was a kid, my favorite show was The Courtship of Eddie's Father. And I would watch that show and just dream about being Eddie, because he had a dad, So this guy came in and made up for that, and it was extremely pivotal, in my process as a young kid. Um, Fast forward to high school, I was not put in any sports as a kid, other than playing out on the street and street ball per se, baseball, basketball, whatever we could come up with um, as kids. But mainly, it's funny, in a highly gang related neighborhood, we played a lot of SWAT. Why we played a lot of SWAT, I don't know, but we did. So I guess you could say uh, there was goodness in us, but living in that environment, you either chose to be a drug dealer or a gang banger, and then there was a small percentage of guys who chose to be athletes. And I
So
guess
hold
I
on, Ron. So where did you grow up? So tell the viewers kind of where you grew up.
I grew up in Southcentral LA. I grew up
Okay.
on Vermont. Yes, on Vermont and Florence, 75th
Yeah.
between Vermont and Hoover, Colden in Vermont. So, that's welcome to the jungle,
Well, that's 70s and 80s, right? 70s, 80s.
Well, hey, if you can go all the way back to the 30s, all the way up through
Yeah.
through the 90s, back at that
Yeah.
time in the early 80s, that's when the crack epidemic and gang violence was at a all-time high, and both
Yeah.
of them supporting one another. The gang violence, um, you know, in which they were robbing people for money to buy the crack, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, I wasn't a guy who was exposed to sports. It wasn't until I got into the 10th grade at Manual Arts High School um, that I began playing sports because I befriended a guy, a buddy of mine. His name was Myron Ashley. We're still good friends today. And he played football. So if I wanted to hang in that crowd or crew, then I needed to play football. I went out for the team. I had no experience. I was trash. I played uh, offensive guard, defensive tackle. Um, Wherever they needed somebody on the scout team, I played. Not having any experience, not having the experience of playing Pop Warner or anything prior to that. And I didn't play very much, but you know, when you come from an environment such as mine, you're looking for things to stimulate you in a positive way. Even when you're in negative situations, you're looking for positive stimulation. And that was my positive stimulation, and the fact that, this guy was pretty cool, and I wanted to hang out with him. So I had to be in those other environments that I had not yet been exposed to. So my second year, I ended up playing freshman ball again because lack of experience. Um, it was over the summer. I was throwing the football around, and we were getting a new freshman coach, um, and his name was Chuck Hollis. So he's out there and just kind of watching things, and I'm throwing the football around, and he comes up to me and he says, "You're going to be my quarterback next year." I was like, I was thinking to myself, "You're new here, buddy. You don't know anything about me. That's not going to happen." But I had a great arm, really, seriously. I could throw the ball 80 yards on the fly, seriously. Tight spiral and everything. And he said, "You're going to be my quarterback next year." So we go into the summer, and I went from being, this guy who had no recognition, and nobody respected me as a football player, to a quarterback, you know. So things kind of changed overnight for me, thanks to Coach Chuck Hollis, who I say, really propelled me in terms of being an athlete, in terms of the way in which he was patient with me and pretty much taught me the game, on a level that was well enough for me to understand what I was doing. And that effort, that situation even prepared me for when I did go on and play in college, because he was a stickler on reading defenses and recognizing coverages and seeing where the safeties was and stuff like that. So that was a big help. And hey, rest in peace, Coach Hollis. Um, I was fortunate enough to continue my relationship with him and let him know how influential and how important he was as a not only a coach in my life, but a mentor and a man in my life.
Yeah.
So from there, my senior year, they already had an established quarterback. So I was like second string quarterback, second string tight end, second string wide receiver, second string punt return, second string. I didn't play very much, and pretty much just stuck to that because of the camaraderie and being around the guys. It gave me something that I didn't have. It was a way for me to escape what I was going through at home. I even started spending more time at my buddy Myron Ashley's house than I did at my house because of the situation and all the things that was going on there. His mother was generous. She was a Christian woman. If you cursed in her mouth, she would wash your mouth out with detergent soap. Yeah, I
Get the
got it
bar.
one time. I got it one time, and never would that happen again. But so after high school, my situation was so bad that I didn't even feel a need to go to my high school graduation. But it was my
Oh,
friend Myron Ashley. His mom told me, she sat me down and she said, "Look, you earned that, and you need to go and walk across that stage because you earned it." And I did, and I'm glad I did. Um, So now it's time to, either decide if I'm going to go and play junior college football or if I'm going to, just let it be. And I let it be. I think I started getting odd jobs. I think I worked at a bakery. Um, I did some other things. And then finally, I got a job with Northrop Aviation. I was a janitor. I was working 3 to 11. I was cleaning like maybe 45 extremely dirty bathrooms. I was making good money. But it wasn't the most glamorous job of them all. Um, and then a friend of mine who I played high school with, Ted Green, he we were talking one day and he was playing over at ELAC JC. And it was going to be 2 weeks before the season was going to start. And he called me up and he was like, "Hey, man, why don't you come out here and play receiver? There's nobody else out here. I think you'll be all right." And I was like, "Well, I don't know, man. I'm working and I got a job and this and that." Well, I went out there, talked to the coach whose name was Coach Roddy Hyatt. And he encouraged me to come out, and he talked to me about getting a scholarship and going to college and things like that. And shortly thereafter, I started going to football practice instead of work. Now, my foster mother didn't know this. She didn't know that I had quit my job. And one day I was at home and she was like, "Hey, aren't you supposed to be at work?" And I was like, "I don't work anymore." And she went berserk. She went out. She absolutely lost it. She started calling me all kind of names and telling me, "I can't believe you quit that job." She picked up the phone, called one of her friends, and told them, "I can't believe this. Blah blah blah. Just quit that good job." And I the following week, I was a starting receiver playing against Laverne University, and it worked out that year. Then the program was cut, and then I came back for my second year, in which I was a starting receiver on a pretty decent offensive team. We weren't very good as a team, but our offense was good. My name was up in the standings for receivers, and that's how I met Coach Mushagan. He was on his recruiting trail. He came by there because the head coach, Roddy Hyatt, coached him some years ago. So there was a relationship there. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't have happened. And there's God working mysteriously again. And so Moose came by, he checked out my film, we talked, and he liked what he saw on film, and he offered me a scholarship. And I was being recruited by Fresno State, Oregon State, Memphis State, Sonoma State. And I chose Fresno State because it wasn't too far from home. I didn't have to get on a plane. I could drive. And something about it just reminded me of the environment in which I came from, which when I got there, I know there was totally, totally different. But I tried to give my scholarship away. I didn't think I deserved a scholarship. I didn't think that, that was something for me, because I used football as a survival tool more so than anything. I wasn't thinking about going to college playing football. I wasn't thinking about the NFL. I was playing football because it was survival. It was feeding my mental health in terms of all the things that I was going through as a young man.
Yeah. Yeah, think about it. It's one of those things, man, like where I think about it in terms of it's you have a lot of young kids that grow up in pitch situations like you're in. Now you were in a broken home, right? So you had just a single mom, and okay. Yeah. So that is also my situation. Grew up with a single parent. And for the most time when I was growing up, it was like I'm looking at all these families and I'm like, gosh, I don't even know what that feels like. And
Exactly.
and you're always questioning your situation, and whether you're a good athlete or a great athlete or anything like that, you're always questioning your situation. So in turn, that down the road, when you're on the field, you're doing good things, you're doing poorly, you take things differently, right? You react to certain types of coaching, you react differently to certain types of situations. And so my question to you would be, you ended up being successful, you're in obviously some right situations, but how are you able to take criticism? How are you able to overcome, these things that most, I don't want to say normal because there's no such thing as normal, but how are you able to overcome certain types of hard coaching and criticisms to keep propelling you moving forward, getting momentum to move forward?
Well, I think, and I'm going to go back to my prayer, because at that age, I didn't have a plan. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I felt like God had always placed people in my path who understood who I was, who reached out to me and wanted to help me or wanted to assist me. And that could be Harrell Burnett, the guy who, took me under his wing after I broke his window. It could be
Yeah.
Myron Ashley, the guy I met in high school who played football. But I think what really was the most important thing is that I still trusted people. I
Okay.
still trusted people. And
Okay.
that's where a lot of young men, young women fall from grace, is that they've been
Yeah.
hurt so bad by situations that they don't trust anybody. They don't trust the teacher. They don't trust the football coach, the basketball coach. They don't trust the pastor. They don't trust anybody. Therefore, they don't allow people who come into their lives, teachers, counselors, therapists, football coaches, who are there to help them. They don't trust these people. Therefore, they don't take the advice and seek help or seek opportunity. I think that's the difference. I was able to seek help. I was able to trust people, that meant well for me.
Well, and that's a building block. That's a foundational thing that's extremely important that, most people don't think about that. It's like they see the end result of you playing at the collegiate level and doing these things and being successful, but they don't understand that there's this whole process that goes on from the point that we're talking right now to actually getting to that point, because you never would have said, "Hey, I'm going to go play football," whatever, unless you actually trusted somebody, or somebody, you felt comfortable with it. You just felt some sort of comfort in moving forward with that.
Right.
And then also, it sounds like, when you end up getting that scholarship too, you still had a little bit of trust or some doubt or whatever that kind of is from, your past, because that stuff sticks with you unless you're around the right people. And you're talking about good mentors and things like that. Um, so how would you say that you acquired trust in people? What are some really, uh, what are some things that really allowed you to gain trust with people or somebody new in your life?
Right. Well, let me just say this. The reason why kids join gangs is because they're looking for something to attach to, something different than what they're getting at home. They're looking for love. They're looking for spaces where they can establish themselves and sort of get kudos about who they are. Those are
Yeah.
some of the reasons why kids join gangs. With me, and I'm going to go back to my prayer, man. I had all the opportunity in the world to be a gang member. I had all opportunity in the world to be a drug dealer. I mean, my foster mother was giving me drug money, having me hold it when I was 11 years old. You could probably catch me with about $300 or $400 in my pocket, and the thinking was that a 11-year-old wouldn't have this kind of money on them. So I had all these opportunities to go this other direction, but God just placed in my heart um, something different, man. And I can tell you, when I decided that I didn't want to be a gang member, we were hanging out. I was hanging out with my friends in the neighborhood. We were all probably about 13, 14, and 15. That's the age when the gangs start to consume you. And it's by your actions in the community, you know, how violent you can be is when they say, hey, yeah, we need you, you know. So we were hanging out and excuse me, one of the guys in our group, he was like, hey, let's rob this guy, this old guy that was coming out of the liquor store. So we're kind of, you know, like a lion would stalk his prey. We're watching this guy. He comes out of the liquor store. He's got his fifth of vodka, and he's sort of walking home. As soon as he gets to the alley, one of the friends from my group picks up a 2x4, runs up behind him, hits the man on the head. He falls down. They take his vodka, they go through his pockets, and this poor guy is laying on the ground, helpless. And I see this, and I'm looking at this situation, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that this is happening. And I felt really disconnected, you know, from that situation. And I knew that that wasn't the kind of person that I wanted to be. So that right there kind of set the tone for whether or not I was going to choose gangs or sports. Not to mention, I had been jacked, robbed. I had been jacked, robbed before. There was a car wash just right across the street from this scenario where I would go on Sunday mornings and I would go and ask people, hey, can I help you wash and dry your car, clean your windows? I bought some Ajax. I had a bucket with some paper towels, some Windex or whatever. And they would give me 50 cents, 75 cents. One day I made $30, man. I made $30. And I was walking home and these gang members surrounded me and they backed me up against the wall. And when they left, every pocket I had was turned inside out and they had took my $30. So, you know, being in situations like that, being the victim per se, taught me, you know, how that felt. And I didn't ever want to put anybody in that position. And I didn't want to be somebody hitting somebody upside the head with a 2x4 for no reason at all. I just wasn't violent like that. My trust factors came from knowing that the situation that I was in was terrible. As a kid, I always felt like there should be more for me. There should be better for me. And I think most people know that they deserve better. It's just, how do I go about getting better? And for me, I just gravitated towards people who I thought my life should be like. You know, Mr. Burnett. There was another family down the street, the Cox family. They had a great family. I would go over their house and spend some time with them and see how they lived and see how they interacted as a family. There was another gentleman on our block who had a pool table. I would always be at his house. And these are times when I could have been gravitating towards this gang life, but I knew that there was something better for me. And I made a conscious decision to chase those things as opposed to chasing those things that I knew would end up in negative consequences.
Yeah. How old were you? I'm sorry. Say that again.
We have to advocate for ourselves. You know, we understand our feelings more than anybody. And when something is happening to us that's not right, it's something happening to us that's not wrong and it doesn't feel right. We need to seek out those people in our life that could help us answer those questions. Is this right or is this wrong?
Yeah. So what age were you when you were going through this? Were you in middle school? Were you in junior high? Were you in high school? Where was that?
This was probably middle school. Yeah, junior high school, middle school, which was junior high school back then. So I'm probably maybe 13, 14, 15, you know, around that age. You know, when influences are very important, peers are very important. When you're looking for a path, and if you don't have one, you can end up anywhere, you know?
Yeah. Well, so moving through that, it's like you're growing up so much faster, and you know, you did get exposed to athletics, but it was like more or less down the road when you were in school, and it's crazy because, you know, especially those areas, you know, when you grew up, it's like it's so tough. It's almost survival mode because you can go to practice, you can be going to class, whatever, but then when you leave school, then you're back into a completely different world. And how are you able to separate the two?
Well, for me, the unique thing for me was that my brothers and my sisters were gang members. So I didn't have the pressure of joining because they had already set the tone for who I was and where I came from.
Yeah.
So in terms of people bothering me or pressuring me to be in gangs, I didn't feel that
Yeah.
pressure because they knew my brothers and sisters already. So there was
Yeah.
no need for them to pressure me into that situation, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, I did have to make conscious decisions, conscious choices. The example of them beating up the guy, I had to make a conscious decision that that's something that I didn't want in my life. And there were other situations that I was close to but not directly involved in, in which I had to say, nah, that's not for me. And we have to be mature enough or cognizant enough to advocate for ourselves and understand the consequences of who we are with, where we're with, and how things are going. And I really believe that we all have it in us to recognize danger. We have our senses, we have our God given senses. And when you recognize danger, you need to act on that fear and change the scenario that you're in. There's a situation that I was in college. I became a good football player and I was invited to this party. When I got to the party, it was a 3-story house. There was socialization on one level. In the middle, there was marijuana. And then on the third level of the house, there was cocaine. So again, I'm faced with a situation where I need to make a decision that would get the best result for me. And at that point, I decided that I didn't want to be in this situation. And I turned around and I left because I didn't want my name in the paper as Ron Jenkins, football player, Fresno State, called that party with cocaine and drugs. We need to understand that when you involve yourself in these type of situations, when you involve yourself with these type of people, the onus is on you to make that choice, to make that decision, that split-second decision to do the right thing.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, you're mentioning that your actions always have consequences, especially when it's in a negative situation, and it's only just a split second that you can decide whether you leave a party or you go to a party and you know that those are the wrong people to be around, or you're in a situation where, like Henry Ruggs, I hate to mention names, but somebody could have taken his keys away. Nick Saban talks about that all the time. It's like, you know what? He blames the friends more than he does Henry Ruggs, because if the friends were doing what they're supposed to be doing, they would have taken the keys away from him and you would never be in this situation. And, who knows where, you could be at right then and there. And that changes the trajectory of your life big time. And so, moving forward to you being in high school and you can get on the field, what would you say that growing up in a tough situation, and going through what you went through, when you became a varsity football player, a star on the field, would you say that really gave you a little edge when you were a player? It had to have.
Well, I didn't get my football edge until I reached junior college because, as I stated,
Oh, really?
in high school I was a utility guy. I was that
Okay.
second string guy for everything. Second string here, second string there, second. So, in high school, my reasoning for sticking with sport was because it was a mental health outlet when I look back on it now, because there
Yeah.
was nothing about my high school career that was prominent other than the second year when I did play quarterback as a sophomore. That
Yeah.
was a great year. And the head coach that I mentioned, Chuck Hollis, he really solidified, who I was going to be as an athlete. A lot of people grow up and they learn the game from a physical aspect.
Right.
This guy taught me the game from an intellectual aspect in terms of reading defenses, recognizing coverages, and things like that, which would prove pivotal to me when I got to junior college and even more so at Fresno State. So for me, high school was sort of survival. Then when I got to junior college, um, I started to feel a little bit of recognition as an athlete. And that kind of settled me into this jock mentality.
Well,
And
it's interesting. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I rode that mentality through um, through junior college, and then right into going to D1 Fresno State. However, I always understood this, and I'll go back to what my high school coach Jeff Engelman said. He told us, "Look, everybody's not A students. Go to class. I guarantee you'll learn something and you'll pass." You know, he goes, and then he ended up saying, um, um, A students are hard to get along with anyway because they think they know every damn thing.
Yeah.
But and I always understood that it wasn't football over education; it was education over football because I came up in that era where they weren't letting athletes get by without the education part of it. I understood that.
Yeah.
Maybe the really good athletes kind of snuck in, but I always understood that I had to have my academics in a place where it would allow me to continue to
Yeah.
enjoy the game of football. I wasn't a great student. I was an okay student. As a matter of fact, if we want to go back to when Coach Moose was recruiting me to go to Fresno State, um, he had to do some finagling, with my high school transcripts, to get me accepted into Fresno State. Say what you want, say what you want to say, but again, God works in mysterious ways. And had not he did that, I would have been stuck in South Central LA trying to find my way in an environment that didn't support success. So I got into Fresno State, which is why Coach Moose, he's been so many things for me, and he means so much to me, in my journey, as does Mr. Harrell Burnett, who became a father figure to me, and my best friend in high school, Myron Ashley, who, by the way, the first time I had McDonald's, Myron bought it, and I'm indebted
Yeah.
to him. I'm indebted to him and his family for the rest of my life. I mean, he introduced me to a Big Mac. It doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. I'm truly blessed to be where I am today. But just going back to that jock mentality, um, that included school. So, hey, call me a jock if you want to, but being a jock caused me to focus more on my education because I knew that if I didn't have the education aspects, then I wouldn't be able to be the jock that I wanted to be. I wouldn't be able to be the football player that I wanted to be, or I couldn't have got out of football what I got out of it if it wasn't for the school. They work hand in hand. So we need to be given a little bit more credit these days because it does take a tremendous amount of effort to be a student athlete. There's so many things going on. You have young men who are exposed to new environments that they don't quite understand, and to juggle all of these different things. It takes a lot of effort, for athletes to survive in that environment. And that's why when they graduate, like myself, I went into law enforcement. I have a lot of buddies that were athletes. They go into the fire department. A lot of buddies that go into jobs where they need to have some experience in teamwork. And there's no better place to get experience in teamwork than sport.
Yeah. Well, I really want to reiterate to the people at home what you are saying right now is that you were just okay, kind of figuring out your life, going through high school, and then sport was a part of it. But this is all a developmental situation. A lot of young student athletes, they don't get those opportunities, and they think, oh, well, my time is up. High school is over. It's over. I don't have any opportunities past that. But basically what you're saying, Ron, is that, it just took you just maybe a little bit longer to kind of figure out who you are, this life thing, growing up. And obviously you were a pretty good player on the field, but then you just decided, you know what, maybe I'm going to give it another shot. That door maybe is back open. And then wham, all of a sudden you're at JC, you're at ELAC, and then you gave it your all. And look what happens. These doors open up. It's incredible. It's amazing. And there's many kids out there with that mentality of, well, it's not working. I'm done going to work, going to have kids, do whatever it is, and then go the wrong, But most kids, I'm telling you, as well as and you viewers at home, hopefully it's you young student athletes with the same mentality. A lot of guys just quit because they aren't getting recruited. Their buddies are posting on Blessed to Receive on social media, these offers and all this crap. Listen, just because you aren't getting anything doesn't mean that it's over. If you still want to pursue this and go and play at the next level, you need to go and at least shut that door, or at least pursue it, then get that door shut and then move on. There's nothing worse than regret. That is the biggest currency out there right now, man. And for me, for most of you that's seen my podcast, I literally just said, you know what, this is what I'm going to do. Walked onto the campus. Somehow I got accepted. I just walked on and did a tryout. But I had the mentality of, you know what, let's do it. I'm committed to it. I'm all in. I'm dialed in. I'm going to do whatever it takes. I did have some skill. You have to have skill. You have to have ability. There's no question about it. But if there's an opportunity and there's an open door, especially junior college, when I talked to Coach Moose, shout out Coach Moose, we were talking about it earlier, that is where things are going to start going soon, because the portal is just destroying a lot of these kids, and it's going to be a big cycle, and these kids are going to be left in the clear. They're going to be left out to dry, and you're going to have to go JC. And there's plenty of really good players that are out there that play junior college that end up getting out. But the point is, I'm going to land the plane with this, is that, young kids, if not the majority, if I was to put a number, I would say 7 out of 10 kids are not ready for the university lifestyle, the academics, the off-season training, the off-campus life with all the distractions, all those different things. They're not even getting up and being there at 6 a.m. for the off-season workouts, all those different things. They're not ready for it. And so it's okay to go that junior college route. And we're obviously advocates of that, because there's 105 guys typically on a roster. You got to turn it over 50 guys every single recruiting cycle. So with this mentality that you're giving me and all of our viewers, it's like, listen, even if ... whatever your situation is, you can say, hey, I still want to keep pursuing this. Maybe I don't think I'm the best, but I'm going to at least give this a shot. You never know what can happen if you have that mentality to just say, you know what, I'm not going to let whoever told me I can't. I'm not going to also let whatever I think of myself. I'm going to go and pursue this regardless. I'm going to fall on my shield, right? They say that in boxing, right? I'm going to get knocked out, but I don't really care. And you know what? Maybe you end up being that person that knocks somebody out. You just never know in this world. And you're a great testament, because you're talking about growing up in Southcentral Los Angeles, which everybody knows, in the 80s and early 90s, man, it's just crazy. And is there one thing that you could say that, aside from mentors, because we talked about mentors and how important that is in your surroundings, is there one thing that really, after high school or maybe during high school, that you were like, you know what, I still want to play? What am I really good enough? And if I am good enough, what how do I approach this? Does that make sense?
Yes, I'm gonna use a term that Coach Mishagan always likes to use with his players, and it goes like this: if you continue to do things the same way, you're going to get the same results first.
Yeah.
Okay. So if the JC route and sometimes the high school route, the navigation is difficult for whatever reason. It's just a difficult process. But if you still have a desire to play football, then the desire is there.
Yeah.
Now, what you do with that desire is far greater than anything else. How you prepare. If you play video games for 7 hours a day, you're going to be great at video games. If you study for 7 hours a day, you're going to be great in academics. If you train for 7 hours a day, you're going to be great in your sport. So the answer is, if you still have these desires to play football, because like Coach Z said, if you don't fulfill that desire, it becomes a regret. And that regret never goes away.
Yeah.
And it affects other things in your life as well. So if you're a kid out there and you're in between, you're juggling the fence, I suggest that you intentionally create a plan of action. And I'm going to go back to my first year of D1 football versus my last year. My first year, I played behind Stephen Baker, 7th round draft pick, Super Bowl winner. I played behind Gene Taylor, who was drafted to the New England Patriots. I didn't get very much playing time. It was a tough transition coming from junior college to D1 on every level. What I ate, how much weightlifting I did, how much training I did, who I was as a person in terms of my maturity. It was a step up. During my junior year, between my senior year, in between that, you have an exit meeting with your head coach. And I went into with my head coach to find out what was going to be my plan for next year. And he basically told me that I had not become the player that I needed to be a starter for going into my senior year. And that broke me. That broke me. But I didn't let it break me to the point where I felt like I didn't have any more control of the situation. I went to Coach Mishagan, who was my position coach, who recruited me and brought me to Fresno State, and who watched me on film and who believed he saw everything that I did, that I could be a good player at Fresno State. At that point, I decided that if I'm going to be in this sport, then I need to do all those things that coaches have been telling me I need to do. Not just being a part of the team, but really focusing on becoming the best athlete that I could become. I went to the track coach and got things that I needed to do to get faster and quicker. I went to the strength coach to get things that I knew to be stronger, which would help me be faster. And one of the things that the strength coach told me was, you need to create a plan to where you could be just as fast in the fourth quarter as you are in the first quarter. And I created this plan of action to become a better athlete. And it worked out. I ended up being the number 4 receiver in the nation my senior year. And it was all because I had a plan. I was intentional with my plan. I didn't worry about the voices outside of what I was trying to do. I was committed to Bulldog football, Fresno State. And I wasn't even looking for an opportunity to make the pros. I was just worried about being good now. Because if you're not good now, then you don't have a later. And I think a lot of kids they want the next level and they're thinking about the next level, but they're not thinking about now. It's not next level. It's what can I do now to get to the next level? This is something I tell my kids all the time. If you're not the best guy here on this practice field, then you're running away from the next level. How do you become the best guy on this practice field right here to where you're being considered for the next level? That's how you get to the next level. You have to have a plan. It doesn't happen just, because you want it. It doesn't happen because you want to put it on your social media page. You have to pay the price.
Yeah.
You have to pay the price.
Yeah. Would you say is there one moment that you could look back and be like, yeah, that was something that really, really pushed me over the edge?
Yeah.
In a good way. In a good way.
I was in spring practice at Fresno State, and I was having a terrible practice. And I approached my head coach, Coach Jim Sweeney, and I was saying something to him about the way practice went. And he stopped and he looked me dead in my eyes. And he said, I don't know why you're talking to me. You're the problem. And it crushed me. I had never heard that before. And everything about me as a victim that my past created was gone. I went home, I looked in the mirror, and I understood that from that day on, everything that happened to me was because of me. And if you don't have that kind of attitude, you're going to fall short. Because what that told me was if I wanted to get better, I had to put in the work. If I wanted to be a better student, if I wanted to be a better athlete, if I wanted to be a better son, if I wanted to be a better person, a better boyfriend, whatever, I had to put in the work to make that happen. It wasn't going to be because of my friend or my relationship with my friend. It wasn't going to be because my high school coach told me I was great. It wasn't going to be because my girlfriend tells me you're the best guy on the field. It had nothing to do with that. But it had everything to do with decisions that I needed to make to prepare myself to become the best person, the best athlete, and the best student I can be. And when I left Fresno State University, some of those comments that were told to me had to be taken back. And that's a great feeling. Believe in yourself, but also believe in the process. Also believe in the process. Believe in the journey. Understand that your journey is like no other. Just because some guy runs 4.3, 40, and he's a mega athlete and he's gonna make it, that has nothing to do with you. Focus on who you are, focus on your talents, and have a plan and be intentional about what you're doing. Don't just show up. That's not going to help. Don't just show up.
Yeah. Gosh, that's a great Yeah, that's fantastic, man. That's great. I would say here's my final question to you. We got to land the plane here, but I would just say what's if there was one message, and I think you may have just given it, but if there's one, well, you gave one great message right there, but I would just say if there's one thing you could go back and you could change and you could tell a young student athlete, you could say, here's what I wish I could have done differently, and here's what I think you should do. If there was one message you could give, a young student athlete on what you did in that you felt was not right to go and do that again.
The along those lines, the only thing that I could tell a student athlete is, and we talked about this early in the show, is you have to trust the program you're in, whether you're in high school, you're in junior college. You have to trust that program. You have to be 100% committed to everything that's going on in that program. A lot of our kids these days, they have trainers and they look outside for help, and they forget that a head coach wants a guy that he can count on. He wants a guy that's more committed to his program than some other program, because That's what allows a head coach to feel comfortable with you. That's what allows a head coach to trust in you, because he's seen you go through the process daily. He's seen you fight. He's seen you stand for something that means something to him. So my advice would be to trust that head coach and to seek out those individuals that you feel have the best interest for you. Trust those people, seek them out. Don't be afraid to go into your head coach's office and say, "Hey, coach, um, I want to be in the rotation. How can I get there? What are some of the things that I need to do?" To not have the answers, to be in a situation where you're wondering what to do and not have the answers, to not be a self-advocate and seek out those answers by going to those people who you are involved in those situations with, whether it's a coach, a mentor, a therapist, a counselor, a teacher, an academic person. You go to those people and say, "Hey, what is it that I need to do to become better? Because I really want to make it." And people will help you. If you ask for help, people will help you. They really will.
Love it. Listen, I think that's a great place to end. And listen, I want to say thank you, Mr. Jenkins, for coming on the podcast. Listen, you young student athletes, as well as parents that are going through this process, just always remember that, there's definitely people out there to mentor you. There's definitely people out there to help you. And Ron and I are definitely here for you for that. And I didn't walk in, Jenkins, your shoes, but there's definitely others that have, and you're definitely such a valuable asset to this world. And I'm just telling you, this whole thing is just getting started, and I'm super excited, like I said. And Ron, did you want to plug anything real quick? You got your podcast, your social media?
Well, Coach Z, I want to say thank you for creating this space. It is definitely needed. There's some people out there that are in situations and they don't know if they should turn right or left. And I think the answers that you're providing with your podcast platform will answer those questions. If there's anybody who, want to get in touch with me, my IG is lifechanger_06, lifechanger_06. I also have a podcast. It's on Kingdom Hood Conversations Facebook, and the name of that podcast is Built Different. And we broadcast Tuesday evenings, and it's pretty much live. So if you're interested in that, I'll leave my email, rongolf6807@gmail.com or builtdifferentpodcast.com. Once again, Coach Z, this is an awesome, awesome platform. Anything you need from me to help grow this thing, I would say, hey, call on me. And I just want to say one more thing, something that you said. I appreciate it when parents are involved in their kids' life. But I appreciate it more when the parents are realistic about the situations that their kids are in. And there's nothing wrong with a parent being involved in the kids' process in terms of dealing with the coaches, but they have to have a realistic approach. And a lot of times the kids are going in one direction and the parents are going in one directions. But if the parents will reach out to the coaches, it ends up helping the kid, because now we have truth. Because a lot of times the kids are not being truthful about the situations that they're in. We have a lot of kids who do the work on the field, and then when the season comes, the parent is wondering what happened with the kid, but they don't understand that the kid was missing practice. He wasn't showing up. His education profile has fell off. If you're not going to school at Southwest, and I'm not talking about not passing classes, if you're not going to school, our head coach won't even let you come to practice sometimes until you get your educational profile going. This spring, he told 2 kids, "No, don't come back to practice. We'll see you in July, because you got some education issues that you need to take care of, and we don't want football to be a distraction to that. You're welcome back, but this is what you need to do." So I would just suggest that the parents, contact the head coach so that we're all on the same page, because sometimes the kids are not always telling the whole story.
Yeah. Well, listen, we'll definitely put all your information in the description down below. So you student athletes, parents, make sure and go through the description. Every podcast that I have, you go all the way down the description and you're going to see links of where you can contact Ron and all the other guests that we have on the show, as well as listen, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. We're going live on YouTube, Walk On Warrior Podcast, every single week, once a week. And then, of course, we're dropping a lot of shorts on YouTube, and we're doing our thing on all the social media sites, the Twitter or X, whatever, Facebook, Instagram, all that kind of good stuff. So we want to definitely do our best to get this message out as much as we can, because time is ticking. So we got to get things rolling as best as possible. Like I said, thank you, Mr. Jenkins, for coming on the show. And listen, down the road, guys, we got some good things coming off the table. So listen, just keep your eye to the what do they say, to the ear of the grindstone. And I always like to end the podcast this way. I always like to say, for you viewers at home, it's not about me or Mr. Jenkins. It's about you guys. See you guys in the next episode.
Yes, sir.